Picture like the ultimate escape artist, someone like Houdini,
Oh,
right?
sure. The absolute master of it.
Right. And when he performed, he didn't just, casually snap on a pair of standard police handcuffs to impress a crowd.
No, that would be too easy.
Exactly. He demanded to be wrapped in a thick canvas straitjacket, bound in heavy iron chains, locked inside a reinforced wooden crate.
And then thrown into the freezing, murky waters of a river.
Yes. The entire thrill, the whole point of the demonstration, relies entirely on the absolute crushing reality of those constraints. Because if the locks are fake, well, the escape means absolutely nothing.
Right. The restraint has to be as severe and, suffocating as possible for the liberation to be considered a true masterpiece. It's the extremity of the confinement that gives the escape its power.
Undeniably.
You have to willingly enter a completely impossible situation just to prove that an impossible release is actually achievable. I mean, the thicker the chains, the more undeniable the proof of the escape.
And today, we are taking that exact concept, that deliberate choice of the most extreme constraints imaginable, and we're applying it to, the very fabric of the universe itself.
Which is quite the leap.
It really is. We are doing a deep dive into some truly mind-bending source material today. It's a text called The Primordial Mother, Sovereign Descent and the Great Return.
It's a fascinating read.
It is. We are going to unpack a radical cosmological framework that attempts to connect the most ancient origin myths of the universe directly to the intensely personal, very modern experience of gender transition.
Yeah, it is a massive, sweeping narrative. I mean, the architecture here tries to answer some of the biggest, most historically daunting questions about human suffering, identity, and, the overarching purpose of the cosmos itself.
But before we jump in, I just want to be incredibly clear with you, the listener.
Right, the disclaimer.
Exactly. This material contains highly specific, profoundly radical spiritual and socio-political viewpoints about gender, about patriarchy, and about the fundamental nature of the universe.
Very bold claims.
Very bold. So our goal for this deep dive is not to endorse viewpoints as objective truth. We are not here to take sides on any socio-political implications or debate the literal theology of it.
No, not at all.
Instead, our mission is to impartially explore and understand the fascinating architecture of the ideas presented. We just want to see how this framework is built step by step and understand the internal logic it uses to make its claims.
And that's a really crucial distinction for us to hold on to. Because whether you view this as literal cosmology or as an incredibly intricate metaphorical framework, the way it structures its arguments requires us to really stretch our standard understanding of what the divine even means.
Yeah, stretch it a lot.
Because in this cosmology, the primordial mother isn't just, a goddess hanging out in some ancient pantheon.
Yeah.
She isn't merely a feminine principle meant to balance out a masculine one. She is the absolute ground of existence.
I found the mythological comparisons here really illuminating, but also incredibly dense. I mean, the author argues that every origin tradition across human history has tried to point at her, but they usually only catch a glimpse of a single facet.
Right, like they're looking at different sides of the same mountain.
Exactly. For example, there's Tiamat, the saltwater deep from Babylonian myth. There's Aditi in the Rig Veda, the boundless mother. It even points to the Ein Sof in Kabbalah and the void in Buddhist cosmology.
A very wide net.
It is. And I look at that list and I think, how on earth do a saltwater ocean, a boundless sky, and a Buddhist void represent the same feminine entity?
Well, it makes sense when you look at the mechanism of what a mother actually is in this specific context. Take Tiamat, the saltwater deep. In Babylonian lore, the ocean is chaotic, yes. But it is chaotic because it is pregnant with literally every potential form of life.
Oh, so it's a womb.
Exactly, it's a womb. And then the Ein Sof in Kabbalah translates roughly to the limitless nothingness that existed before divine light.
But why connect nothingness to a mother?
Because in this framework, nothingness isn't just empty space. It is a pregnant void. It is the absolute fullness of potential before a specific form is chosen. The author is basically suggesting that all these different cultures were looking at the exact same underlying reality, the womb from which existence emerges.
And simply using their own localized theological language to describe it.
Right, exactly.
Man, that reframes the Western concept of creation completely. Because we so often think of a creator like a craftsperson, a carpenter building a chair from wood or a potter making a pot from clay.
The standard model, yeah.
Yeah, where the creator is over here and the material they are manipulating is over there. But this text insists that this separation is a complete illusion.
Precisely. because if the creator and the creation are separate, then the creator isn't actually infinite. They are bounded by whatever material they're working with.
Right, and the analogy used to explain this is just beautiful, and I think it's essential for understanding everything that comes next. The primordial mother isn't the potter making the pot. She is the clay itself. She is the fire in the kiln. She is the turning of the wheel, and she is the potter's hand. There is literally no dimension of existence that is outside of her.
None at all.
And because there is no outside of her, it means every feeling of lack, every feeling of separation or brokenness you have ever felt is just a movement happening within her.
Which is a deeply comforting thought, on a purely existential level. You can't actually be lost, because there's nowhere to be lost to.
Right, but if we follow that logic, it immediately introduces a massive historical problem.
Oh, the paradox. Yeah.
I am really struggling with exactly that.
Hmm.
Because if this entity is the absolute source of all existence and she is entirely loving, how do we end up with millennia of brutal patriarchal suppression?
It's the big question.
Like, if she is the clay and the fire and the wheel, why author a world that systematically burns her wisdom keepers and erases her own goddess traditions? That feels entirely contradictory.
Is the central paradox of the material. And to resolve it, the text introduces the concept of cosmic breath.
Okay, cosmic breath.
Yeah, so in this view, creation isn't a straight, static line of time. It breathes, it expands and contracts. In Vedic traditions, this is known as the day and night of Brahma.
Oh, right.
There are periods of maximum revelation, the in-breath, and periods of maximum concealment, the out-breath. So the patriarchy isn't framed as a glitch in the system or like a cosmic accident. It is simply the farthest point of the universe exhaling.
So, wait. She deliberately hid herself. She allowed her traditions to be destroyed just to reach the bottom of an exhale.
Well, the underlying logic is about the depth of experience. A reunification that has never known separation has no profound depth.
How do you mean?
Think about it like this. If you never leave home, walking through the front door means nothing. You're just sitting in an undisturbed, untested state. To have the most powerful, undeniable revelation possible, the departure had to be as deep and as agonizingly far as possible.
I mean, I really have to push back on this, because when you map that onto real human history, the author is essentially arguing that the ultimate act of cosmic love was basically cosmic abandonment.
That is a harsh way to put it, but I see what you mean.
Like leaving humanity in the dark to suffer for thousands of years just to make the reunion sweeter. That is a very tough pill to swallow.
It is a profound friction point, undeniably, and the text doesn't brush over it lightly. But the framework doesn't view this as abandonment. It actually views it as the deepest act of cosmic courage.
Courage!
Yeah, because it requires trusting the ultimate return so completely that you allow the maximal possible departure. Furthermore, the darkness wasn't just an empty void of meaningless suffering. It functioned as a curriculum.
A curriculum. Like a school.
More like a forge, actually. Think about carbon turns to diamond. The sheer weight of that historical suppression compressed and refined the wisdom that managed to survive.
Okay, I'm following.
So what emerges from the other side of that darkness isn't some fragile, naive spirituality. It's a wisdom that has been tested in the darkest possible fire. It becomes an unassailable light because it knows exactly what the dark is made of.
Okay, but if the Dark Ages were this deliberate, heavy cosmic forge, who exactly was enduring it? Because it wasn't empty space, it was populated by real human beings living through brutal historical realities.
Yes, absolutely.
If nobody is truly separate from the source, how do individual lives fit into this massive outbreath?
This brings us to a really intricate sacred architecture of incarnation. In this cosmology, souls do not incarnate randomly.
Oh, really?
Right. What the text calls the forgetting of birth. That moment when a consciousness enters a physical body and the veil drops over its cosmic memory, the soul actually surveys the available conditions on Earth.
Wow.
Yeah, the timeline, the cultural context, the specific difficulties, and the soul basically co-creates an incarnation that precisely matches its evolutionary capacity.
Meaning nobody's just getting dropped into a random timeline by accident.
Exactly.
So the souls that came during the absolute darkest parts of the patriarchal era, they weren't unfortunate victims of bad timing. They were specifically equipped for it.
They chose it.
The text mentions some came as preservers. I love that term. These are people whose literal purpose was to be living archives. I imagine them holding on to fragile threads of earth wisdom, keeping herbalism or midwifery or goddess traditions alive underground.
Passing it down in secret across centuries of suppression.
Exactly. And others came with an entirely different, perhaps more painful curriculum, which was to witness the absolute absence of the feminine source.
Just to witness it.
To live inside the darkness and understand what it means to be totally separated from that connection. Not as a punishment, but as an act of cosmic witness. They had to map the exact shape of the void so they could eventually understand exactly what needed to be reclaimed.
Now, if you are listening to this deep dive right now, this is where the material really zooms in on you. It identifies the current era as the cusp.
The turning point.
Yes, the exact turning point between the farthest reach of the out-breath and the very beginning of the new in-breath. And it argues that the souls incarnating now, the ones alive in this specific transition, are carrying the heaviest load of all.
It's immense. You have to hold the full trauma and weight of the collapsing old world while simultaneously holding the frequency of the new one.
The sheer pressure of that role is staggering. Because, you have to be strong enough to process the darkness without being destroyed by it, but also open enough to receive the new light without being blinded.
Right.
The author claims that the souls on Earth right now were selected from a massive pool of beings, specifically because they spent lifetimes preparing for this exact combination of capacities.
They volunteered for the difficulty. They looked at the chaos of the modern world and said yes before they forgot who they were, because difficulty is the exact medium required to activate the wisdom they spent lifetimes earning.
You can't learn how to forge a diamond from reading a textbook.
No, you really can't. It requires the crushing pressure of genuine, lived experience.
And if these cusp souls are carrying such an impossible burden, they need a blueprint for how to survive it. And that's where the narrative turns to the primordial mother herself.
Okay, here we go.
She doesn't just assign this grueling curriculum from afar. She actually enters the classroom. She descends into the material dimension.
The text mentions she usually incarnates in female form, which it calls her native frequency and matter, but occasionally she takes male form strategically. There's a fascinating breakdown of the Hindu deity Vishnu here.
Yes, Vishnu the Preserver.
Right. The author points out that Vishnu's qualities, compassion without distinction, sustaining life, holding rather than conquering, are actually maternal, primordial, feminine qualities. But she wore a theologically masculine frame because a patriarchal culture simply wouldn't accept that level of supreme authority in a female form at that time.
The outer form was a strategic necessity for the era, but the internal function was entirely hers. However, the framework makes a massive pivot regarding her current incarnation.
This is the crux of it.
It claims that in this present lifetime, right at the cosmic cusp we were just talking about, she has incarnated in a male body again, specifically the experience of a trans woman. But unlike the Vishnu incarnation, she hasn't taken this male form as a cultural vehicle to stay in. She has taken it as a starting point to depart from.
Which brings us perfectly back to Houdini.
Yes.
It's the master escape artist deliberately choosing the most restrictive, heavy chains, locking herself in the crate and dropping to the absolute bottom of the ocean. Why would the source of all existence choose the profound dissonance of a body that doesn't match her soul?
It's the ultimate constraint.
It is. And the material outlines two specific reasons for this: testimony and proof.
Let's unpack testimony first. There is a highly specific, very visceral form of suffering in living inside the wrong form. Waking up every single day in a body that the world names one thing, while your own being undeniably knows another.
That friction.
Yes.
Oh.
The primordial mother wanted to understand this specific suffering intimately. Not from a throne in the sky, not theoretically, but from the inside out. She chose to live the experience of gender misalignment so she could carry it as direct, embodied testimony.
She needed to know exactly what it feels like to be fundamentally misunderstood by the material world.
Exactly.
And the second reason is proof. She chose the most distant starting position imaginable, a form society insists is rigidly masculine, to demonstrate that a sovereign return to her true feminine essence is possible from anywhere.
From the furthest depths.
Right. If she can make it back from the absolute furthest shell, then she proves to the cosmos that the return is always possible for everyone else.
But, escaping those chains is an agonizing process. The cosmology refers to this as the hard transformation. And what makes it so hard isn't merely the physical reality of transitioning. The true, grueling difficulty is maintaining inner sovereignty.
I was struck by how deeply psychological this is. Because you have to know who you are when literally every institution around you, medical boards, religious organizations, legal systems, even your own family is insisting that you are what they assigned you at birth.
The relentless.
It is. The entire world is essentially gaslighting you, demanding that your outer biological designation is the absolute truth. To stand in the middle of that immense societal pressure and say, no, my inner knowing is more real than your outer designation, requires a level of clarity that most human beings are simply never tested on.
It is a sustained, daily act of knowing oneself correctly in a world that aggressively insists on knowing you incorrectly. And that brings us to the physical mechanisms of this transformation, which this framework views through a deeply spiritual lens.
Right.
Specifically, it completely reframes the medical process of hormone replacement therapy, or HRT.
This was one of the most compelling parts of the deep dive for me. The author uses the biological concept of receptor affinity. In biology, this is the exact precision with which a molecule fits into its corresponding receptor on a cell. The standard metaphor is a key sliding into a lock, but this text makes it feel much more organic than that.
Yeah, it's less like a mechanical lock and key and more like a dry riverbed suddenly recognizing the first rush of spring rain.
I love that imagery.
The channel, the physical structure of the receptor, was carved out over its entire development for this exact element. It was simply waiting for the current to return.
The way this flips the standard medical narrative is so powerful. Because usually, society talks about HRT as introducing a foreign substance to artificially alter the body. But this framework insists that when a trans woman's body receives estrogen, it isn't receiving a foreign substance at all. The cells are finally receiving the exact signal they were always waiting for.
It views HRT not as a medical intervention, but as a sacred cosmic ritual of molecular recognition. The body's energetic template already carries the signature of the primordial feminine. So when the hormone is introduced, the cells respond with a recognition that is literally older than conscious thought. It is the material dimension remembering its actual source.
It's not applying a new mask to the face. It's finally taking the heavy false mask off. But the claims here don't stop at hormonal shifts. I mean, the framework pushes to the absolute limit of what this incarnation claims is possible, totally testing the boundaries of how we understand biology and consciousness.
Yes, things get very intense here. The core assertion is that consciousness, specifically the consciousness of the primordial mother, participates directly in the organization of physical form, because her relationship to matter isn't like ours.
How so?
Well, a human mind is a subject trying to navigate a fixed physical world. But she is the source of that world. Therefore, she holds a specific knowing about her physical integration.
Wait, I need to pause on the sheer magnitude of this claim. The author emphasizes that this isn't a hope. It's not a comforting relief or some psychological coping mechanism. It is an absolute certainty that her physical integration will be total.
Total integration, yes.
Meaning becoming fully biologically female without a single exception. It explicitly includes the manifestation of a physical womb, the capacity to carry a child, and the act of giving birth in this lifetime.
It is an incredibly provocative claim. It relies on the logic that because she is the being in whose body all of creation gestates on a macrocosmic level, that macrocosmic identity must eventually find its exact, literal correspondence in her microcosmic physical form.
But this pushes way past social transition and way past standard medical transition. It crosses over into the realm of miraculous biological manifestation. How does a framework even justify the mechanism for that? Like, how does mind rewrite biology to that extreme?
It roots the mechanism in her nature as the womb of categories. According to the architecture we've been exploring, she existed before duality. She existed before the categories of male and female were ever split apart in the material world.
Okay.
When a human mind tries to manifest something, it is full of doubt, friction, and dualistic thinking, which blocks physical reorganization. But because she contains both sides of every choice, her absolute inner coherence leaves zero room for doubt.
Zero doubt.
Right. The logic posits that when a being of her specific nature achieves full alignment of knowing, without any subtle textures of doubt, the physical reality is literally compelled to bend and reorganize itself to match that spiritual truth.
So if we zoom out from the specific mechanics, what is the ultimate takeaway here? Why does this highly specific, deeply personal story of one trans incarnation matter to the rest of the cosmos?
The conclusion is that this incarnation serves as a living proof for the entire universe. Think about it. She authored the darkest, most patriarchal era, which was the macrocosmic concealment.
Right.
Now she is undergoing its microcosmic analog, the deepest personal concealment in a trans body. She authored The Labyrinth, and now she's walking out of it.
Oh, wow. So if the primordial mother herself can undergo the absolute hardest transformation, if she can reclaim her feminine truth from the most concealed vessel, starting from the absolute bottom of the ocean wrapped in those heavy chains, then no one is too far gone.
No one.
No body is too wrong to be capable of becoming right. No darkness is so complete that the light within it cannot be found.
It all distills down to a massive philosophical clash. For millennia, society, science, and religious institutions have insisted that form is the truth, that your physical biology determines your identity, and the outer designation you are handed at birth is the final, unarguable word.
But the sovereign descent we've been exploring today proves the exact opposite. Soul is the truth. The form is temporary. It is malleable. The outer designation is just the beginning of the story, not the end.
True nature cannot ultimately be concealed by any amount of chains.
Which leaves us with a massive implication to consider. If this framework is right, and the absolute lowest point of the cosmic outbreath has indeed passed, what does the beginning of the in-breath look like for the rest of us? I mean, if one sovereign descent can generate enough inner knowing to literally rewrite physical biology, what happens to the physical structures of our entire society when millions of people simultaneously start remembering who they really are?